And we have here a remarkable passage from John chapter 11. This is the pinnacle of the first half of John's Gospel, where we see all these signs of Jesus' power and might. It's a great culmination of the theme of life that runs through this whole part of John's Gospel. Jesus is the life of the party in John chapter 2, bringing wine where there is only water. He brings life to a boy nearing death. He brings sight to a blind man, and he feeds thousands of hungry stomachs all at once. He is the Lord of life. And we see that powerfully come to its head in this incredible declaration he has, that he is the resurrection and the life in today's passage. Now, I've stolen my sermon outline today from Tim Keller. Not the sermon, it's my sermon. But I liked his outline, and so I stole it from a long time ago. Tim Keller preached on this passage the Sunday after September 11 in New York City. Incredible. That day his son was booked in for knee surgery, but it was cancelled because they expected the hospitals to be full of people from the terrible events of that day. But that wasn't true. The hospitals were empty after September 11. You either lived or you died. That was it. There was nothing in between. September 11, as many events in life are, give us that stark reality of death or life. There is no half measure, is there? Sometimes we kid ourselves there is, but death stalks us all. But in John 11, we see Jesus stalk death. Let me tell you 4 things. These are Keller's 4 words. Jesus gives us, as he stalks death, 4 things today: tears, truth, anger, and grace. Let's start with tears. I'm going to take the passage slightly out of order. Lazarus, Martha, and Mary are part of one family. 3 people who Jesus knows quite well. They're on intimate terms with him. That's why this story is part of this gamut in John's Gospel and nowhere else in any other Gospel account. Earlier in the passage, we didn't read it, but Jesus gets notification that Lazarus is sick, that he might die. Jesus then delays his journey, does not go to help his friend. And Lazarus, because Jesus delays his journey, dies. And so when Jesus arrives, as our passage said, Lazarus had already been in his tomb for 4 days. Things have well passed him dying. He has been laid to his final rest. And he wanders into this scene and greets both sisters in turn. Martha first, who comes to meet him, and Mary, who doesn't. And Jesus goes to find her. Let's take Mary first. Her response is real and it's raw. She refuses to go out to see Jesus. Did you notice that? Martha comes to meet Jesus. Mary notices, Jesus knows that Mary hasn't come, and so then goes to find Mary. And Martha goes to find Mary and says, "The teacher's asking for you. What are you doing?" Mary runs up to Jesus. And when she reached the place where Jesus says, it says in verse 32, and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." A simple, cutting, brutal question. That's true. Jesus, if you'd bothered to teleport over here, if you'd bothered to just come when we said he was sick, this would not have happened. You would have healed him and he would have been fine. This need not have happened, and you could have prevented it. Mary knows that. Even those in the crowd later know it. Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? We feel here that incredible way that death, so many deaths, come unbidden. They're difficult and they're painful, and we feel the dislocation of those we've lost. I don't know when you first experienced death as Mary experiences it here, the wrenching loss of someone. Mine was in year 12, I have to say. 3 weeks out from our trial exams. 23 years ago, in case you want to count my age. 2 young men in my year were sitting on the boot of a car, and the car needed to be edged just a few metres down the road. It hit a bump. Both lads got thrown off. One just did a commando roll very simply and was fine. The other, Dave, hit his head and died instantly. It should not have happened. It need not have happened. It was unbidden, like so many dark and awful griefs in life. We all have our questions like Mary does. If you had done something, God, this didn't need to happen. You could have prevented it. We're invited, perhaps, by this passage to ask those questions of Jesus himself, as Mary does. Mary's weeping as she says these things to Jesus. And you know what Jesus does? Deeply moved? What does it say? Jesus wept. Verse 35. I love this. It's so unnecessary for Jesus to cry. Think about it. He is about to raise Lazarus from the dead. He's about to turn sad tears into happy tears. He's about to fix everything. He could just say, don't worry, I'll fix it, and just move on through. But Jesus doesn't need to cry. Jesus just does cry. When meeting human misery and pain and suffering and grief, he cannot even help himself but break down into ugly sobs, uncontrolled crying. This is Jesus. This is God, who slows down to weep and listen just because he wants to. Not because he has to, not because he needs to, but because he lives in solidarity with us and our grief. God, in the midst of our pain here, weeps and mourns and listens to us. Friend, can I encourage you that if God does this, then perhaps it could be your pattern also? That when your friend is in sorrow and pain, you need not fix it and unnecessarily weep with them instead, bearing their pain and grief and guilt as God himself does in Jesus. That's the first thing Jesus gives us. He gives us his tears. But the second thing he gives us more than empathy. He gives us truth. This is where we go back to Martha. Notice how different the conversations are, Mary and Martha. Mary is this incredibly emotional conversation where she's weeping and asking honest, raw questions. Martha says the same question. She says, if you'd been here, I wouldn't have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Martha goes on to call Jesus teacher to Mary. She's very kind of intellectual about this kind of stuff. She has spiritual questions about things in the face of death that matter more to her. She's not lesser for not crying, can I say? Just because if you lose someone and you don't cry doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Grief is uncontrollable. It comes to us in different ways. Some of us will have deeply intellectual questions in the face of death. Others of us will be weeping for days. Then we'll trade places with each other, perhaps. Grief comes in different ways, in different forms. But the conversation Martha has with Jesus is different. Jesus says, your brother will rise again. Martha says, well, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Then Jesus says these incredible words. Well, I am the resurrection and the life. You need to understand something here. In Jewish understanding of life and of death, come and grab a seat, friends. Feel free to come on in. There's seats here. There will be a final day when all the dead will be raised to life again. Every single person. Here's Daniel 12. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to everlasting shame and contempt. Everyone rising from the dust of the earth to life again. The Jewish expectation is never of clouds in the sky, different people in different clouds, etc., etc., a kind of non-bodily reality. No. Jews expected everyone to be alive again. In a great resurrection, on the last day. And so Martha says, yeah, I know. On the last day, Lazarus will be raised to life again. Jesus says, no. You don't know what I'm talking about. I am the resurrection. I am the life. The resurrection and life are not ideas, not something that can happen to you. They reside in Jesus. To have Him is to have life that lasts forever. To have Him is to know you will be raised to life again. That's what that word rise that Jesus uses means. It's just the verb of the word resurrection, of being raised to life again. Jesus says life can be found through belief in Him. Get this. Eternal life does not come by how good you are, by what you've done right, by how much you've done wrong, or how much you've been to church. None of that. Jesus doesn't say that. Jesus says, he who believes in me, she who believes in me will live even though they die. And dying yet will they live. Jesus says, I am the life. And if you are with me, then you will live forever. On that day, when I found out that someone in my year 12 year had passed away, my friend Dan was the one who called me about it. And I was a very young Christian. I became a Christian a couple of years before that. He knew I was, and he said to me after telling me this devastating news, Matt, where has Dave gone? I mean, what a question. It's the question, isn't it? How do we be sure of where we're going to go? Jesus says, if you trust Him, you have life. Simple as that. No questions, no complexity. Trusting Him, relationship with Him. If you're with Him, then you have the life He has. Simple as that. And so Jesus throws the question at Martha. Do you believe this? And Martha says, yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Friend, do you believe this? Do you believe this? That Jesus is the resurrection and the life, and it doesn't matter what's in you, it matters what's in Him. Life is in Him. Here's truth. Then Jesus gives us His anger, actually. Really interesting. You see, if Jesus is the resurrection and the life, and if Jesus stands in solidarity with humanity, weeping with us in our pains and our sorrows and our losses, then as He walks up to the grave of Lazarus, what kind of emotions fill Him? We see it there. Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. That's verse 38. That same phrase, deeply moved, is what is said just before He weeps. A bit further up, I can't find the verse, but somewhere up there where Jesus weeps. Now, the word deeply moved, it's a really interesting word. It's a word for, okay, if you're watching the Winter Olympics and you've seen someone at the top of the half pipe on the snowboard, that's my favourite event in the Winter Olympics, and you see them, because they've fallen over twice, talking themselves up to themselves and firing themselves up with anticipation and hope and strength. I think that's Jesus on the way to Lazarus' tomb. Filled with anticipation and energy. Fired up a little. Maybe you could picture Jesus walking to the tomb of Lazarus like an old Western with two men kind of facing each other, ready to draw their pistol and shoot the other down. Jesus walks to Lazarus' tomb full of a kind of anger, a defiance. He's ready for a duel with an enemy. Jesus faces death, decay, darkness, chaos, death itself as His own mortal enemies. Jesus says, take the stone away. Martha says, well, he's been in there a while. And the KJV here says, but Lord, he stinketh, which I like. But Lord, he stinketh. Another way of saying, listen, he's been dead for quite a while. Like, this isn't just like fresh. He's like, there are bugs in there. Stuff is going to be smelling really bad. Put some perfume on, but he's really dead. And he's going to smell really bad. And then Jesus talks to his Father in heaven. Amazing. Jesus goes into a duel with death, and his weapon is prayer. He calls to his Father in heaven, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of those people standing here, that they might believe that you sent me. And then in a loud voice he says, Lazarus, come out. That's it. A prayer upward and a loud voice. And Lazarus is summoned out of the grip of death itself, still wrapped in the clothes he was on that day that they buried him. There is here no titanic wrestle. There is no here duel that takes days. There is but the command of he who is the life. And death's hands can do nothing. Jesus walks to the tomb of Lazarus in anger and defiance, and finally with victory. This is Jesus' relationship with death. He hates it. And he will command it, control it, and destroy it. I think we're invited, in the same way that we saw Jesus weep, we're invited into his anger, actually. We're invited into his defiance. We're invited not to embrace death as a friend, no, but as an enemy. To see chaos and darkness around us and let it bristle with us, longing for it not to be, in defiance and hope. Christians are to share a defiance of the world as it is, in a hope of the one who commands life out of death. Jesus gives us his tears, his truth, his anger, but finally he gives us his grace. There are two outcomes to this miracle that Jesus does. They're not recorded here. We didn't have the space. We ran out of space, didn't we, Tim? If you're still here. Two things happen. Lots of people believe Jesus. Lots of people go, yeah, I'm in. This, if you can do that, I'm all in. But the other group of people go tell the Jewish leaders that everyone's following Jesus now. And the Jewish leaders decide that Jesus has become a threat. They say, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. They see Jesus as a threat, a disruptor to the national security. And then one of the leaders gets up and says this, you do not realize that it is better that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish. And so from that day on, they plotted to take his life. You see, Jesus, by raising Lazarus from the dead, consigns himself to death. Jesus will interrupt Lazarus' funeral with his own. Jesus perhaps is not like the snowboard rider at the top of the mountain or like a gunslinger. Perhaps he's like a knight with sword drawn in front of a dragon, who realizes that to slay the dragon, he can't do it from outside. Instead, he must let the dragon swallow him so he can cut his way out from the inside. Jesus died on the cross to overthrow your death, friend. He was swallowed by the dragon to release its grip on you. I deserve death. I don't deserve life. And so Jesus in his grace, Jesus the resurrection and the life, was swallowed in death, that you, friend, might have his life. Do you believe this? Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life. Are you with him or not? Death and life, they're stark. We all face it. But Jesus today will give you his tears. He will give you his truth. He'll give you his anger, and he will give you his grace.